Hi, I'm Armando. I'm back again with some more information on Raptor Sharp, the book that was released probably a couple of months back now on Kindle format on Amazon. There's some questions that I've gotten from some people that have bought the book and actually made some really good comments, and I'm hoping that y'all are getting some really good benefit from the drills that we show in the book. It's a very simple book, light read, but really easy to get skills from based on using peripheral visual focus or the non-foveal focus to be able to not only cut down on reaction time but also increase one's speed, so to speak. And if you've tried and really tested this stuff, you may notice that you may be roughly around the edge of 66% faster. That's kind of huge as far as hand reaction, time reaction relative to whatever stimulus. That means that you're moving your reaction time to within the first third of what usually would take you a little while to respond to. So that means you're really incredibly fast in comparison. Even if you have not physically gained actual speed, perception allows you the best of timing, and that means catching stuff early due to being able to initially see the motion whenever it's still at its root in the beginning of its initiation. So it's really kind of cool that way, and kudos to you. You've been trying this and working at it, and thank you for the good responses. What I would like to share with you today is some additional stuff that it plays off of the peripheral visual thing, but it has a lot to do with how we shift and think, so that way whenever you start applying these tools generally in whatever area you want to endeavor, whether it be sport shooting, or it be fighting, martial arts, this sort of stuff, and being able to duck a stick or a knife, that sort of stuff, or just catching a ball better, or being able to get out of the way when somebody's trying to touch you, this sort of stuff, if you're playing tag even. This is going to help you understand when and where this shift is occurring, and also the quality of thinking, the difference in it, because there is one. And this is something a little deeper for those of you that really want to delve a little further into what real meditation can become like, and the state of what we call mushin, or holy emptiness, feels like whenever we shift there, whenever the monkey chatter stops, and we have more clarity and general perception of everything as a whole versus separate parts that we try to label and name. So here we go. I've got these diagrams up here because there's definitely a direction I want to go with this, because there's a point I want to make relative to the peripheral visual focus, because it brings on not only the visual perception, which if you talk to folks that are looking at structuralist, anatomical responses, they're not necessarily coupling the shift in consciousness that occurs whenever we do this. So it's actually a rather convoluted, sophisticated thing. It's easy, not hard to do, just sophisticated in the manner in which it works, because we are sophisticated creatures. We definitely have a very sophisticated system that is not separate from other parts, yet we tend to look at things in a very reductionistic way. So I'm going to get rid of the jargon, and we're going to go for the gold right now. And we'll see what it is that we want to look at, because this is really going to be really informational one, but also educational in the sense that you can use it and do better. And I want you to share this. Give this to people, please. But also, it's going to make you better in what you do in a shorter period of time. So here we go. First off, I want to mention that one of my heroes in psychological field was not necessarily a psychologist, but rather a neuroanatomist. His name was Dr. Paul MacLean. I think he passed in 1970, born 1913. But he was on the cusp of neuroscience as we knew it in biology, having to do with structurals of the brain. And the simplest things that I'm going to identify are going to be the three areas that we tend to look at. There's more segments to the brain, of course, but these are the primary structures that we look at when we're looking at martial art 1, which is where I come from after about 27, 28 years of actually a little longer training, that we start understanding what it is that many martial artists, even though they were incapable of describing and replicating results, could tell you what it felt like based on their experiences. And it's taken science for us to understand what they meant when they were describing their experiences of flow, so to speak. And Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi actually did quite a bit of work on the flow state, but this has to do with the flow state not necessarily in the consciousness perspective, but where it's occurring in the structures whenever we shift into that state that we start calling flow. So the archipallium, this is the lower part of the brain that we call the brain stem area, and also this is other structures, not just the brain stem, having to do with the occipital region that are more basic thinking, and I don't want to call it necessarily higher level cognitive thinking, but the more discrete perceptive mind, the wordless mind that we need to pay attention to, because it is discretely different from the higher cognitive. Not separate, but just different. And there is a feel to it that we really need to differentiate to get the best benefit from whenever we're using this, whether in external events, fighting, martial arts, this sort of stuff, or even doing meditation or yoga for that matter, being in that state. The second one has to do with the paleo cortex. It had to do with the mammalian brain that we also used to call the limbic system, limbic area. Joseph Ledoux actually had a couple of good books, one, The Synaptic Self, the other one, The Emotional Brain, that talked about not only the limbic regions, but the system that we are thinking is there, but actually our emotional stuff doesn't just occur within these structures, but the structure makes sense. This gives us an idea as to where we're responding from. There's an amygdalar response that occurs because the amygdala is within that little place between our ears, somewhere in the middle, that has to do with fear response conditioning. So therefore, it's not too inaccurate to say that our limbic system region, has to do with our emotional stuff, but our thinking actually is changed whenever we're more reactive in this area. But the higher cortex, that our neocortex, is what McLean would call that, and that has to do with the newest development in our brain. That has to do with the convolutions, the higher areas of gray matter that we like to play with, that we call higher thinking. And one of the things that Dr. Glenn Moritz mentioned in his books was that whenever we're in this state of martial defense, protection of self, is that we tend to overvalue the higher cortex. And whenever we're thinking about what the higher cortex does, this is our best reasoning, our ABCs, our 1, 2, 3s, also our if and then thinking. This is also the part that takes care of the past, present, and future thinking all at once. But this is also with the assumption that there is safety. We have a conception of safety, a perception of safety, meaning perception, our environment from the skin out appears safe and non-threatening, and also in the skin in, we're responding in a way that seems to be relative to what's going on out here, feeling safe because it looks or feels safe out here. And now we're not talking about the subtle stuff that might change that. We'll get into that in another video. But the important thing is that we have this idea of higher social brain reasoning that occurs, that it's actually a modern idea that somehow we're so powerful because we can send people to the moon. But whenever we look at things, when it comes down to very simple survival, we actually do not have this order of thinking occur, and it being the most powerful. It happens, but it doesn't have power, so it can be trumped by our lower brain, so to speak. And we'll kind of look at this in a sense of order, the way it occurs. Whenever we're most safe, heart rate and breathing most low, whenever we can do the best cognition, the best math, and send people to the moon, this sort of thing, we have blood flow that's occurring here at its fullest, and that's what's carrying the sugar to fuel what we call thinking, so to speak. But also it goes in this order in our mind, in our social mind, and the way the media kind of plays it. They have us think that we're higher thinkers many times, and we buy into this, not knowing that they're actually playing with our emotional brain. And now we have this need that feels like a survival need for an iPad or something like that. Of course, we never had that way back when, but we have to look at this for what it is, and it's a model, it's a flow chart of when we're safest. Assumption of safety is assumption that our safety needs are being met. And if we can do that, we can do our highest reasoning and our most bestest thinking. And I say that on purpose, so my English teacher will probably be appalled. But just to make the point, whenever we do this, it's higher cognitive thinking order 1. We're in control, and this happens first. And that means that we somehow have control of this machine, this creature that we call ourself, that has some very base drives, but somehow it's under the best control of this thinking here. We'd like to think anyway. But also then our emotional state, secondary, this is our number 2 here, in order, is something we control as well with our best thinking. When we get emotional, our best thinking really makes things better, and yes, I am saying that rather sarcastically. And then we have 3, whenever we're in survival mode, whenever we're looking at not only perception, but also those things that make our body motivate in the sense of self-defense, self-preservation, or I'm hungry, or even horny for that matter. But the thing is, whenever we're looking at that kind of drive, we're looking at satiating those needs. But with our best thinking, we can make all of that go away. We can settle it. We can somehow subsume that, and it'll be okay. It'll be all right. It'll kind of go away and go in the background. Not necessarily so, but I'm saying this once again with a sarcastic emphasis because this is what we're being told, that this is how we are. But in truth, it's something else. In truth, and I'm going to take the word truth, we're throwing that in the trash can. Let's make it fact. In fact, it is. Because a fact is something that we can adjust depending on how accurate we get over time. Truth is immutable, and I don't speak in truth. I'm not quite there yet to be able to speak from that point, but from the factual perspective, what we're looking at is the actual way we think. Lots of science has been done to support this, but we know that we perceive and we feel first. We feel first, and depending on how we feel, perceive relative to our environment, that's going to determine how we think. That'll be the filter that we actually use to decide on how we're going to do or not. Whenever we're in extreme terror, it gets simplified down to one or two binary thinking, and that also starts to become the roots of what we will call the beginnings of bigotry, even racism for that matter, or even ethnic differences, wherever within even an ethnicity we have differences that occur because of beliefs or whatever. But we simplify reasoning, we tend to encapsulate and even put people in boxes that make more sense to us. But whenever we're most calm, whenever we have the most blood here, we can actually open our minds, so to speak, and be a little more equanimical and less judgmental. When we start moving towards stress and threat, we become much more judgmental because it has to do with making the judgment that will support our survivability into the next few moments sometimes. Then finally, the appropriate paradigm. The reason I want to mention this is that there's nothing wrong with this. Higher thinking first. Within the appropriate paradigm, assumption once again, safety first. If safety is there all around, this works really well, and our lower brain will be less reactive and probably less apt to overcome our best ability to play within the rules, so to speak. But whenever we're paying attention to this, we understand that depending on what's going on outside, how we perceive will determine how we conceive and also how we act. And when we're looking at what we're doing in Raptor Sharp, we look at the tools that I shared in there being not only very sophisticated, but multi-leveled, because we are. But not only that, we can actually get a lot of enjoyment understanding this first, because we won't be deluded easily by ourselves or even by our social mind saying, hey, things are really better than what they are, when in actuality our lower brain's telling us this isn't cool, this isn't safe. And I'm going to say one thing: trust your gut. But this being said, this is just a whole lot of extra to fill in some gap for the questions that I've had as a response to having bought the book. And thank you, all of you, for having done that. And the fact that the globe is so small now is really rather fascinating to me. And I appreciate y'all seeing my videos, also telling me about the book and how much you like it and how effective it is. Please keep working with it. Let me know what's going on. There's another book coming down the pipes here soon called Musashi's Edge, and that has to do with the application of this on a higher level, having to do not only social dynamics, but also self-defense and safety, and using that to apply influence in your environment. There are a couple of other things that we'll be working on. One has to do with dynamic balance. That video will come out shortly as well. I really enjoy doing this and taking the time to share. And what I would like to do, last point before I close for the day, is telling you that whenever we shift between these areas, pay attention to how you feel. Because depending on how we're thinking, there is definitely a feeling component that goes with that. There's a referent there that tells you, okay, when I feel this, I know I'm thinking this way. Once again, we feel first. And that'll determine how much control we'll have going into the future, regardless of what endeavor we do and how successful we'll be. So for now, thank you for your time. Best in training. Talk to you soon.